Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Pointy Not Sharp. Today we're taking a look at the Canadian pattern 1911 bayonet. This was later known as the Ross Mk2 bayonet. So I've done a previous video on the pattern 1908 or Ross Mk1 bayonet, and this one really just supplements this one here. So if you want to know the history as to what led up to the Ross to begin with, watch this video. This one's just going to go into the changes and where it all went. So these bayonets were made to fit a number of the Ross rifles. So starting with the Ross 2, two-star, then the Ross 3 and the Ross 3B. I think those are the only three rifles that this bayonet will fix to, because it's actually got a different mechanism to the earlier ones that won't affix to the earlier rifles. Now the bayonets themselves were made by the Ross Rifle Company, and they were made between November 1911 until 1918. I don't have the exact date that production ceased. Now, a total of 400,000 Ross rifles were made. Of those 400,000, probably about 350,000 were versions that took this bayonet, but I don't have exact numbers. So I think there was like 50,000 of these bayonets ordered. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't think they made enough rifles for them, and a number of these were converted to this pattern here as well. So the exact total numbers of these isn't 100% clear, it's a little bit murky. But we'll jump into the history. So in 1908, the Canadians brought in their Ross Mark 1, 2 and 2-star rifles with the pattern 1908 and Mark 1 bayonet. I'm getting myself really confused here. The Ross Mark 1 and pattern 1908. And they had a huge number of issues with the rifle, and there were a couple of complaints about the bayonet as well, but not too many. The main complaint was penetration was a bit of an issue with such a broad head on the blade, but that was addressed much later. So one of the issues with the rifles that was addressed was they increased the diameter of the barrel, and that meant that the existing muzzle ring on the Mark 1, as you'll see is much smaller, would no longer fit. So they needed a new bayonet, and they addressed a couple of things while they were there. There were a couple of minor changes made. So on the 11th of November 1911, we got the pattern 1911, a lot of 11s in there. And on the 1st of December 1911, in paragraph 707 of the Canadian list of changes, these bayonets had the names changed from pattern 1908 and 1911 to the Ross Mark 1 and the Ross Mark 2. So that's what the official nomenclature is now. So it's probably correct to call them the Mark 2 and Mark 1. Now, I'll go through a couple more dates at you. I apologise for that. The Mark II sealed pattern was approved on the 14th of May 1912 and the 6th of June 1912. I don't know why there's two dates. Maybe someone who has a better grasp of how that all works can explain in the comments, but those are the two dates associated with the sealed pattern for this bayonet. And in October 1912, we had our first modification to this bayonet here, and that was the modified crosspiece. So while it had previously been brazed on, it was now pinned on. I don't see a pin, so maybe this is a brazed example, but I assume a pin would just be like a rivet going through the crossguard. Maybe it's underneath the grip, I don't know. And October 1915 was where we saw the final modifications to the bayonet here. I'll go through them. So the Mark 1 had a spring in the mortise pressing up into the rifle and one in the muzzle ring pressing down to stop rattling of the bayonet during movement. Really cool little feature. The muzzle ring didn't follow through to the Mark 2, and in October 1915 the first change was the deletion of that mortise spring pressing up. We also had the mortise itself beveled. So you see it's flared out at the end there. That makes it easier to fix to a rifle, while the Mark 1 is just square cut, or a lot more square cut. We don't have that same beveling. The blade profile was changed. You'll see it gets a lot sharper at the point. We'll compare that to the pattern 1908, which is a lot broader. The 1908's actually been referred to as a butter knife. I've seen that referred to. And finally, we had a dull grey finish applied to the blades, and this was a modification. This wasn't something done out of the factory. So bayonets being produced, like this one here, still came out of the factory in the white, whether those that went through the modification have the modification here, like this one. Now, on the 21st of October 1915, there was a British contract for the Mark II bayonets and the rifles. You can spot them because they don't have any Canadian markings on them. And even though they've got the Mark II muzzle ring and all of that, they have the Mark I blade. I don't have one of those to show you today, unfortunately, but I'll track one down eventually. Now, because of the ongoing issues with the rifles, pretty much by the end of World War I, the Canadians weren't using the Ross anymore. They were using the short magazine Lienfeld with the pattern 1907 bayonet like the rest of the Commonwealth. And many of the Ross rifles and bayonets were actually supplied to Britain during the Second World War for the Home Guard defence of Britain itself. I don't think they saw too much use though, other than the occasional pot shot at the Luftwaffe. Some were also supplied to Chile, actually, in between the wars as well. So if you're unfamiliar with this, when the UK would prepare ships for sale for Chile, they'd make them under license or contract or whatever, and they would completely outfit them with a complement of weapons, and then they'd send them to Chile completely stocked. An example of this is World War One. They had a complete complement of, I think it was model 1912 Mauser bayonets, which were taken by the British, and they were used in British service because they needed them more during the First World War. Well, in 1920, the UK put together the HMS Canada, which was retrofitted for Chile, and that was stocked with Ross rifles and Ross bayonets, so a number of these are also in Chilean service. But we'll jump into the construction. A couple of these are also converted to fighting and hunting knives post-war as well, but that's another video. So the blade, we've got a sharp and true edge. We've got a really funny blade profile. It's not particularly pretty. I don't like it too much. Slight false edge. We've got a rounded spine. Pretty thin blade, but very strong. A little bit elastic. It's got a bit of bend to it. And yeah, true edge. Got no fullers on either side of the blade. And then we've got a nice solid ricasso and a really solid crossguard with a tiny little quilling down here. Got our little muzzle ring, larger than the Mark I. And then we've got our two wooden grip panels retained by two flathead screws. I don't dare take them off, it's not mine. We've got a full tang that appears to be brazed onto our pommel. Pommel is a bit of a funny shape. In fact, we've got a weird humpback shape to the grip and pommel. It's very iconic to the Ross. I actually quite like it. It is actually quite comfortable in the hand. Gives you a good purchase on it. That nice little bulge there, really wrap your fingers around. And then we've got our press button going from left to right with a ramped lug in the mortise. Ramped lug being so that the bayonet can slide onto the bayonet lug, and as it slides on, it will depress the lug and push it from left to right, and then as it passes, it'll just snap into place. Then to remove it, you've obviously got to manually press the button yourself. And then we just have our mortise, which is just a T with a beveled edge. That's the construction of the bayonet. The scabbard, they were just leather scabbards. We have an internal steel chape. You can see that poking out the bottom there. We've got stitching down the back. We have a leather frog, and we've got a steel mouth just there. Very simple frog and scabbard. The only real thing to talk about other than construction finally is the markings. And one thing I love about the Rosses is we have quite a few markings on both the combination of the bayonet and the scabbard and the frog. So first on the left pommel, we've got our Canadian ownership mark or acceptance mark, which is our C with broad arrow inside it. Next we have our patent, which is 2 or 11, whichever you want to decide that is, because on the Mark 1s we have an 08. So patent 1908, whether these were also the patent 1911. But considering this was made after the date that they changed the nomenclature, that'd be a 2 for Mark II. Then we have an inspection mark down here, being a crown over a number 4. Each inspector would have their own number and stamp. So this one was inspected by number 4, whoever that was. And our date of manufacture being the 3rd, 1916, March 1916. On the other side of the pommel, we have our manufacturer's mark and our patent date. So we've got Ross Rifle Company, Quebec, patent, that 1907. We've got a few more inspection marks on the tang, again, number 4, so the same bloke did all of the inspections. And then down here, we've got our unit marking. I don't know how to decipher this one, and on the earlier one, it was a little bit different. But there could also be a serial number matched to a rifle, I don't really know. We also have little inspection marks on the wooden grips, and that's really it for the markings on the bayonet. We're lucky enough though that we also have some great markings on the scabbard and frog. So I'll start with the frog. We've got the government acceptance mark being the C with broad arrow at the top, and then a 10 beneath it. That could be a date of manufacture, I'm really not too sure. We've got another little inspection mark just here being our crown and number 4. So number 4 was very, very busy that day. And then on the back here, we actually have some scratched in or penciled in numbers and a name. I'm assuming that's the name of the soldier and probably a regimental number or something like that. I don't really know. But then down the bottom, here we've got Mark II, I assume for the Mark II scabbard or Mark II bayonet. And then at the top, we've got our acceptance mark again, C with broad arrow. We've got RRC, which I assume is the manufacturer. And then 1916, which I assume is our date of manufacture. So at a guess, maybe the frog and scabbard were manufactured at different dates, but maybe that 10 stands for something else completely. Maybe it's like a patent 1910 frog, I don't know. Really cool bayonet and frog. These ones aren't mine, they belong to a friend who's graciously let me take a look at them and show you guys. If I've made any mistakes in my rendition of the Ross Mk2 today, please feel free to correct me down in the comments, because I'm sure I've probably made a few. There's a lot of contradicting information out there. There's 2 fantastic books on the subject. I don't have access to either. One is the Ross Rifle and the other is the Ross Bayonet. Yeah, the Ross Bayonet book and the Ross book. I don't have access to either of those 2 books, but I hear they're fantastic references. So if you want to learn more about them, I highly recommend them. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about the bayonets. Before I leave you today, I thought I'd also mention I've started my own line of merch. So if you want to support the channel, I've got mugs, shirts and stickers for sale on my store, linked to my channel page. So this is not AI generated. I actually spent some money and got a graphic designer to design this for me from scratch, and I put it onto a shirt. It's supposed to be a British soldier coming out of the trenches with a rifle and bayonet. The guy's specialty was skulls, so why not? Yeah. If you want to support the channel, guys, all the proceeds are going towards future funding of the channel, so travel to museums, ordering or postage for more bayonets so I can bring them to you, and I really need to up my game with camera and audio and editing software as well, and probably lessons in how to use them, so everything will be reinvested into the channel. Anyway guys, that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.